What's up, guys? Casino Crime here. Doing another video for you guys today. Hope you enjoy it. And it's a video review that I did for member Shaq, going over some live play that he did, playing 1-2 on Bovada. Hey, but before we get started, I'm a pretty big fan of business training, personal development, and stuff that we've gone over before. And I heard something interesting. When I was listening to a product the other day that I thought I would share with you. One of my idols, his name's Ramit Sethi, and uh, I think I just like the way he handles himself. He's very professional. He's kind of like a real competitor, and he's actually like honestly sort of a dick. Not a bad way, but he's just kind of hard nosed, and a lot of guys in personal development and business training, they're sort of like to beat around the bush and kind of say stuff that doesn't mean anything, like just try harder. Uh, and he's got real good actionable steps to get what you want out of life. But there was something that he said the other day, and he was talking about how he communicates with people, and it made me think of poker, and I wanted to share it with you today. So he says he only brags about three things. Okay, he only brags about how hard he works. He only talks about how much effort and work he puts into his courses, and he only brags about, how amazing the results have been, with his clients and his customers and his students from his courses. Okay, he never brags about like how much money he has or like how much free time he has, or about stuff like that. And I find that a lot in the best poker players that I know. Right, the best ones that I know, all they do is talk about how much they play, how much they love playing, how positive they are. Right. So it's important that if your goal is to become a better player, to move up in stakes, and just have a better outlook on life and a better feeling about yourself, it's important to surround yourself with positive people. I've had the opportunity to get to know a lot of different poker players over the years, and I can tell you that it's draining and exhausting when you're around people who are just kind of bitching all the time about bad beats, or they're just kind of negative minded, and it can really be nice when you find people who talk about like they just laugh about bad beats they put on people, or they only post stuff in your Skype that's like when they made quads and won a huge pot or something like that. So my advice is don't talk about bad beats with anyone, of course. Just pretend like they don't happen. Even though everybody knows that they do, just don't talk about them. And secondly, stay positive and optimistic, and you'll go very far. Okay, so hope you enjoy the video today, and let me know what you think of it and if you have any questions. All right, let's get to it. Hey, what's up, guys? John Beaupre, aka Casino Crime here, and I'm really excited to do another video for you guys this week. I know we had a little bit of a hiccup last week in the videos, but that was actually because I recorded this video that you see right here, but I had some technical issues. Video was a little bit too blurry, and at Deuces Cracked, we only want to give you high quality videos that are, of course, good for the whole educational process. And so I made a little bit of a time to re-record what we went over, and actually I think it'll end up benefiting you because I've had a chance to see these hands and think a little bit more about them, so I can hopefully lend some better advice. So last time we were talking about the ways to beat low stakes, micro stakes, specifically 25 cent, or I should say 25 PLO. And this week I've got a video that was submitted by member Shaq. And I've talked briefly with him actually, and I know that he's kind of plays a lot of live, looking to get into some online, and he submitted this video for me to look over. And in the last video I asked people if they wanted me to look over a video for them, and I got a few responses for the people who were sending me videos. I really appreciate it, and that just goes to show you, like, if you send me videos or you send me hand histories, I'm definitely going to go over them in videos. So keep doing it. Reach out to me on Skype or direct message me at Deuces Cracked, and I'll be sure to get that to you. So what we're going to focus on today is just sort of like overall strategy for playing a little bit higher stakes, since we're playing 1-2 here, And I think it's kind of cool that he has a full ring table and he has a short-handed table because the strategy differs a lot. For everybody who's considering coming out to Las Vegas for the World Series of Poker, you better get ready to play some full ring PLO. If you're going to be picky and choosy about only playing short-handed games, you're going to miss out on a lot of good opportunities. And I think that for the most part, people who play live PLO are playing pretty much just full ring. It gets short-handed at the end of the night, and so certainly the skills that you develop when there's fewer players come in handy. But overall, it's important to know how to play any form of poker, but specifically live PLO. And I'm going to fast forward so we make sure to get to some better hands, or get to more spots, I should say. So this is an interesting hand here. We flop a wrap, inside wrap, with a poor flush draw, and it's like, it's like 7-way. And this is a good time to talk about sort of the difference between very multi-way pots and heads-up pots. In a heads-up pot, this is like a really strong hand. Let's say we open the button and the big blind called. I mean, this is like a hand that's definitely worthy of like betting and calling a check raise. But in a multi-way pot, it makes a big difference that we don't have the nut flush draw. When it's 7-way, I don't know the exact number, but I would imagine that the majority of the time our flush draw will be covered here. And so we're really relying on our inside draw being clean, which I think it will, of course it will be, like most of the time. That's where all of our equity is going to come from. But, in a 3-way pot, like let's say that it was small blind and big blind and button, like I would always donk lead here. But when it's 7-way, I really would just check. Not to mention that when it's this multi-way, the likelihood of someone having a set of aces, a set of nines, ace-9 it's really good. When it's full ring, there's a lot more limping with aces, a lot more passive play with like the weaker aces than there are in a short-handed game. So I would play this one pretty slow, although it does look good on the surface. And in general, my approach in the big multi-way pots is to just play pretty straightforwardly. Good spots come up where you can pull off a big bluff with a good blocker, or you pick up on some tendencies when facing certain players. Maybe you have like a good opportunity to stab or steal or like check raise bluff and stuff like that. But in general, like these aren't the big, like bluffing in big multi-way pots is not going to be like a big money maker for us. So I usually just when it's in 3-way pots, I can get out of line a little bit, but once it becomes like 4-way plus, then I usually just kind of tighten up the gears and play my hand for its value and try to not invest a lot of money unless I have a good hand. I would describe it as like merging it up. That's what I usually say. So we had sort of an interesting spot on the turn, I guess. Small blind leads. It was 7 into 20, I believe. Let's go back real quick. Oh, yep, 7 into 14. So he leads half pot. And let's, just to reinforce the concepts we talked about before, remember, like at the lower levels and against weaker players at all levels, I mean, it could be even like 25, 50, 25, 50 or 50, 100. Even at the higher levels, or the higher stakes, I should say, weak players typically have weak hands when they choose weak bet sizings. So although that we would assume that most players aren't leading here with really weak hands, his bet sizing kind of suggests that he is. That doesn't mean that I'm ready to like put in like a big semi bluff or like put in a pot sized raise necessarily, but I certainly would like it a lot more than like a normal raise or a normal donk lead, I should say. So, but we just call. And it turns out that like he ends up having kind of a dumb hand. We choose not to bluff with, I think is just fine, especially with the player behind us. So kind of funny that was the small blind had such a weak hand, but I still like the way that we played it. Okay, I'm just gonna, like I said, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit more so that we can get to more hands. Easy fold, of course, from the small blind. Getting a hand on the right table. Looking at a hand history. Nice. So, you know, something that I mentioned earlier about like the way that you don't make money in a full ring game is by like bluffing very much when it's like 4+ handed. And of course we like raise over these limpers here. You know, an easy spot that a lot of people lose money, and I'm going to actually pause it just because this is important enough to talk about, is just kind of like being a lot of like weak stabs in multi-way pots with nothing, you know, like as a bluff, just because, you know, just because like you'll see this happen a lot. Like let's say some flop comes, it checks through, let's say it's like 7-8 deuce, and the turn is like a 6. I don't know, it doesn't really matter. And, you know, we just kind of like bet because everyone else is checked and we expect everybody to fold, but that really doesn't happen. So in live, usually I say it's better to like bet and follow through on a bluff than it is to just be one and done all the time. So like either bet and follow through or just check and give up typically. Just because like in live, most players, especially because there's a lot of like limped pots and single raised pots and there's not very much 3-betting, people typically will just call one bet really easily. So you just expect like most of your times that you bet once to get called, you know, and since people are wider in those spots, you can feel comfortable like following through. So back to the hand on the right, like we do end up c-betting, which is good. I think our sizing is okay. I would have personally chosen bigger. We've talked a little bit about bet sizing in other videos, and on these board textures, my sizing would be bigger, like definitely like 16 or 17. It's just hard to balance this small of a sizing. I guess like Shaq probably thought that he was going to induce maybe like a light jam from that short stack. But you know, I would prefer just like betting a little bit bigger and then and then like getting all in with the $96 stack. Here, this is kind of an awkward spot, frankly. We get check raised. Let me go back and make sure I get the sizings correct. We get check raised, min, and call. So yeah, I mean, can't fold. I'm not like too happy about the situation only because, you know, we don't have any backdoor flush draws. We do have a backdoor straight draw, which is nice, and the turn gives us a gutter. And all things considered, like this is the best turn for us. So as played, like I would just jam it in now. But you know, and a lot of times, like when we do take those lines where we choose small sizings, it can be difficult because we don't know if our opponent is like putting in more money because we took a weak line or because he actually has strength. In this case, like he check min raised, and I think on this board, especially with these stacks, most people are going to be weak and just have like kind of a dumb hand. And like realistically, it's a fishy move, and that's something that, like if I was watching live or even like online right here, I would take a note of it and be like, you know, he's probably a weak player. Like, unless you have a dynamic with somebody, you can pretty much assume that that's going to be a weak play, not like a strong play. So I think we actually do end up, and again, like I missed the action on the left I was paying attention to. So I want to make sure I get this right. Okay. So this $96 stack opens for pot, and we decided to just call. I think that's pretty good. Again, like paying attention to bet sizes, I'm much more cautious against pot-sized opens than I am like if he would have min opened, I would have preferred just 3-betting because we're going to be in position, and you know where you make a lot of easy money in low stakes PLO is just like re-raised pots in position over and over again. But you know, like here, I don't think that we have any specific reads against this player. So you know, if it's close, it's certainly this hand plays fine in like a single raised multi-way pot in position. So I like the call when facing a pot-sized open. But I think that if he like min opened, I would have no problem 3-betting it certainly. And this guy min 3-bets from the big blind, and it looks like we decided to put in a pot-sized 4-bet, which I think is great. You know, you could call, but it's, you know, a min 3-bet can be weak, certainly. I mean, sometimes people with these stack sizes will be doing it for so that you know, someone does what you're doing here. But I think it's pretty good. You know, we're going to just like, sometimes this guy will fold and we get his dead money. And it's clear that he doesn't have aces, so you know that we're doing well against his, like, you know, the non-aces part of his range. So that's good. I like it. Nice play. And here I'd still just call. Sure. Yep. Well, and yeah, again, like, I don't know if you guys have like color codes or how you do it, but you certainly need to mark these types of things. What would my note read for this type of player? Well, weak player, certainly. Min 3-bet with a 30 big blind stack-ish. 200 PLO, April 1st, 2015. You know, I always date my notes because people's games change over time. So, especially if you're going to be playing on a site for a long time, you want to know how old your notes are if you come across something. This guy here, I would note something that, you know, pot-sized open was Jack 10 4-5 with a suit. So I would want to know that this guy is opening for pot with pretty weak hands. He's not just going to have like a nutted range when he opens for pot. So we can actually start 3-betting these types of hands when he opens for pot. And, you know, when I'm taking notes on people, that's usually the type of approach that I have, or when I'm paying attention to players, you know, both live and online, I like to look at sizing things. And especially at lower levels, like sizing tells or sizing information is usually very reliable. You know, if you have only like a limited time with someone, different tendencies on board textures can vary from hand to hand, and it's harder to decipher, but a lot of people like the, you know, a lot of people, their sizings are like pretty reliable for just like staying consistent. So fast forward to get to another hand here. Sure, we just fold the 6-10 queen, which is perfectly fine. We've got a good hand on the right table. Jack 10 9-8 with a suit. Rainbow, you know, I'm fine actually just calling. Yeah, that looks good. If it was a single suited hand, if it was single suited, I would always 3-bet it. And even here, like, if you 3-bet this, it's fine. It's button versus cutoff. Can't really go wrong 3-betting this button versus cutoff against almost any range. I don't think that calling is so bad. If you're saying that if your default here is to 3-bet, you're certainly not making a mistake, but against the right players in the right situation, I could certainly call. The only real mistake would be folding. But, you know, calling and 3-betting you can mix up depending on the player. I normally would probably 3-bet this, though. I would just call on the left table. I mean, this is a good example. You know, King, Queen, Jack 10 with a suit is a good example of a hand that can be played either as a squeeze or as a call. You know, the wider a player's preflop range is, the more likely I am to squeeze this hand. The tighter the player's preflop range is, the less likely I am to squeeze this hand. So, and you know, it varies a lot in position, out of position. Like in position, I'll squeeze this very frequently against a wide player. Out of position, I'm less likely to squeeze it when I'm facing a tight range. So like against under the gun opens, I almost always just call this. But against like a button open, I would always 3-bet this. Flop very nice. Queen's full. And looks like we're trying to figure out what line to take. We decide to check. And something tells me we are going to lead. So we lead 4 into 32. Interesting line. Maybe it was a misclick. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe he was trying to induce, but I would be interested to hear his thoughts there. I would normally just lead like a standard size, like 20 or something. You know, trying to get a call out of an overpair or another trips hand or, you know, like a king. So I think if you're going to bet small there, don't bet 4, you know, bet like 8. I know it sounds kind of nitpicky to change it by like a couple of big blinds, but it actually does matter. You know, if somebody's going to call 4, they're going to call 8, or if you're trying to induce, you're still going to be able to induce. with a bet that small. Yeah, I mean, and we've seen a little bit of this from Shaq, where he's like limping pre. Um, on the left table here, you'll see in a moment. So, uh, let's talk a little bit about like limping and open limping. Um, I will open limp a lot in live games, and depending on the table, you can adjust sort of your open limping strategy. At a very aggressive table, it's actually, let me back up. In live play, limping is an important part of having is an important part of your strategy. And you know what the biggest difference for me between live and online is the presence of the button straddle. Okay, you don't have any button straddling online, and button straddling completely changes the dynamic of live, and that's one of the reasons why play is so much more passive in live. You know, you don't have as much three betting because people are just like kind of limping, waiting for the button to make a move and that kind of stuff. So you know, it's a big part of your strategy, and that, now like you know, this is perhaps a topic for another video, but you know, you can balance your limping range as long as you have some like limp re-raises, you know, and at aggressive tables, I really do like, you know, having a good balanced like limping range of like some, you know, mixing up with like some limp calls with like polar hands, like an ace nine, 6-8 with the nut suit, with like some other premiums, like, you know, so that people can't just like hammer your limps. So how does that really transfer over to online? Basically, I like never really open limp online. It would be a really specific situation where I'm open limping, but it's certainly from like the cutoff in the button, you should pretty much never open limp. And in this kind of situation where like, you know, we have a suited ace, some straight making potential, and these guys just being complete donks. We want to play as many raised pots in position as possible. So, although like I've said in other videos that this is a hand that like plays well in, you know, high SPR, you know, single raised pots and stuff like that. This is a scenario where, I mean, you know, it plays better in like a raised pot in position against donks, essentially. So yeah, as played, like I actually think checking is okay. We'll give our opponents a chance to stab at it with bluffs, and if they're going to stab with bluffs, this is certainly one of the spots that they'll do it. So I think it's okay. Okay. I mean, looks like we're going to cruise the lobby and see if we can pull up some other tables, which I think is a pretty good idea. And it, you know, I don't know what his approach to grinding is, but I usually like to have, if I have enough monitor space, you know, have the lobby open so you can kind of like keep your eye on it in case good tables start, so you can go sit um, before other players do and pick a good seat. And yeah, just kind of see how the day's going. And I'm not saying that I switch tables or seats all the time, but it's good to kind of like just have the tables open and see like if a good seat opens up and stuff like that. Um, yeah, that's a good fold with the king 8 3 6. I mean, I would open. That's the type of hand I would open from the button, but otherwise, just dump it. We fold the ace jack 4 deuce with a suit. think that's pretty good. Again, we see like a little bit more of this like limping stuff. I just prefer raising. I mean, ace 10 9 4 double suited, is that a good hand? It's not great, but if you're going to choose to play it, like at least come in for a min open. And you know, the benefit of coming in for a min open rather than a limp is that if you limp, players are a lot more likely to isolate you than they are. If you min open, a lot of the hands that would isolate you might actually just call. So you're seeing the flop with a cheaper price, and you're also keeping your range more disguised if people are paying attention to that. So my advice to Shaq would be, if you're gonna limp, just like min open from this spot. I don't mind playing the hand. I mean, I think at a tough table I would just fold it. But these guys overall seem really passive, and realistically, like what determines your playing style and your pre-flop hand selection at any table is what the rest of the table is going to let you get away with. You should, I mean, if you have good post-flop skills and you have a significant edge in that way, you should be looking to play as many hands as possible. I think against guys like this who, you know, they're not going to put you to too many tough decisions. It's a good idea to like see some flops with these hands, but you could do it for cheap. You don't have to limp. You can min open. I like min opening more. As played. I'm trying to figure out if we should bluff or not, and I like it. So good follow through there. And it like the two things that I don't really beat myself up for at the low stakes especially are value betting too thinly and triple barreling too much. I think that those are two things that like in low stakes poker that if you're going to err on the side of one, it's a lot better to err on the side of aggression and value betting too thinly than it is to like be just checking back too cautiously or, you know, afraid to barrel. So this is kind of an interesting hand on the right table. Let's rewind and make sure that we're getting it right. So, our opponent opens the 6. We call on the button with king 10 10 9 with a suit, which I think is a good play. Flop comes ace jack 6, 2 clubs. We have backdoor spades, backdoor not spades I should mention, and a gut shot. And he bets 6 and 18, which again, like, certainly a lot of information to be gleaned from these types of sizes. I mean, I think that all options are pretty good. Like, floating is certainly an option because we're getting such a great price. The one issue with floating is that it's difficult for us to represent very much, only because there's like a direct correlation with like how small people bet with how wide they peel flops. So, you know, if anyone's paying attention, they can kind of notice that it's hard for you to have you basically have a float always when this kind of situation happens. So, the nice thing about raising is it looks stronger. And I think that it's pretty safe to assume that his range is most likely weak for choosing this sizing. So, you know, like the combination of us getting a pretty good price on the raise and us already like facing a weak range is a pretty good argument for raising. And we actually call and then raise, and he folds. So nice play, Shaq. I like it. And again, like it's all about sizings. Like that would be another note that you can definitely take on this guy is small sizings equals small hands. March or April 2015. That's what I would write. And also, it's just even more confirmed. Like now we see him limp under the gun. We know he's probably just going to play. He's just trying to see some flops, and he's going to play straightforward. So we're going to be able to pound this player by playing raised pots and positions and just c-betting a lot. Hand here on the left, nice and standard. Standard. Okay, sorry guys, there's not very many good hands. Here's a hand that like I don't remember if we decided to play or not, but we decided to fold. I think that at this table, opening it would probably be fine, only because again, like nobody's really 3-bet yet, and they're playing straightforwardly. So I think it'd be okay to open that. I would open for pot. Folding is, if you find yourself folding this as your default, that's good. Like in a 6-max game, certainly fold this. If it's rainbow, I would definitely fold it. Even in this situation, if it was rainbow, I would definitely fold it. But I think that that's a hand that's like kind of overvalued. You know, having the gap at the top makes it a much worse hand, especially like since we can assume that most of the time it's going to be multi-way. So yeah, we 3-bet ace, king, king, 7 double suited in position. Pretty standard so far. And I think that I would just c-bet. I mean, you know, whether or not I c-bet here kind of depends on my image, I guess. But I could go both ways, honestly. I think that checking back and betting are good options. The reason I like checking back is, you know, we kind of induce light stabs. There's a lot of runouts where, of course, we can call bets. We have 2 backdoor flush draws. My reasoning for betting was, again, like these guys have played pretty straightforwardly. So I'm not too concerned about getting bluffed. You know, it is 2015. Like people 3-bet like middling rundowns. So I think that you can certainly have these in your range. And having the 7 blocker is nice. So a lot of times, like I like to default towards aggression. But I certainly think that checking back is a good option there. But betting is certainly fine too. I like to look for reasons to c-bet as much as possible until players kind of prove to me that they're fighting back. If I remember right, we limp here. Yep, we do. And I mean, I think it's okay to raise. Like, it seems that we don't have any particular reads on this guy, but ace 4 or 5 deuce with a nut suit is, I think, okay for a raise blind versus blind. As played. I think it goes check, check. Nope, we probably just check fold. Hopefully we just fold on the right table. Good. Nice play there, Shaq. Putting in the raise and this is like, I like the idea, but you know, there's actually no need to pot it. We're just trying to get him to fold his air. It's not like he's going to fold a queen to us anyway. So if you're trying to bluff here, you could just make it like 18. You'll save yourself, you know, the 3 big blinds when you actually do run into a queen. On the right table, sometimes I 3-bet this. I mean, if it was double suited, I would certainly 3-bet it. But I think that, you know, seems Shaq is like trying to take some pots in position, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. This is a hand, though, that plays a lot better in a heads-up pot than it does in a multi-way pot, especially because we're in position and we're deeper, and our hand plays okay against a 4-bet. I wouldn't hate 3-betting, but we did decide to call. I really don't like the raise here. We're basically bluffing. We do have like a good value hand, but I don't know, we're pretty deep. I mean, the SPR is like, you know, well over 10. It's like 15. And it's just kind of overplaying our hand a little bit by putting in a raise. I mean, it's nice in the way that, like, you know, overpairs fold so they don't get to realize their equity and that kind of stuff. But I think that just, you know, we can peel in position and get a better read on our opponent with more information. So I normally would call here. You know, like if he jams it in, I think that you're like probably supposed to fold. He should be just ultra nutted. And you know, we don't have any redraws, and like typically when you're that deep, you want to avoid situations where you're either fucked or flipping. I like to call it. And that would certainly be, you're like flipping against the best. The best case scenario is you're flipping in that situation, but you can get it in basically dead otherwise. So I'm going to stop the video there for today, and what I'm going to do is continue this next week, but we covered a lot of good topics, and hopefully Shaq is getting a lot out of this video. Really enjoyed it. I thought we got into some good spots, and I'm looking forward to continuing the discussion next week. Hey, if there's something you want me to expand on that was touched on in the video, let me know. If you have any questions about any hand histories, please feel free to direct message me or write it in the forums. This is Casino Crime, signing off. Good luck to you guys.